In early 2004, life was quiet in Aurora. It was the kind of suburban calm that makes people feel safe. Tree-lined streets, detached houses, routine. For 53-year-old Al Kite, that calm defined his life. Al was private, polite, methodical. He worked as a software engineer and lived alone in a modest townhome. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't impulsive. Friends described him as careful, which made what happened next all the more disturbing. In the spring of 2004, Al placed a simple advertisement. A room for rent. Nothing unusual. No red flags. Just a spare room and an opportunity to earn extra income. Soon after, a man responded. He introduced himself as Bob. Bob was calm, soft-spoken, well-educated. He claimed to be a foreign exchange student, possibly from Eastern Europe. He spoke with an accent, noticeable, but not exaggerated. Over several meetings, Bob toured the home. He asked thoughtful questions. He took notes. He never rushed. Al didn't feel threatened. In fact, Bob seemed almost too careful. They agreed Bob would move in. And then, on April 22, 2004, everything stopped. When Al didn't show up for work, concern grew. Co-workers tried calling. No answer. Eventually, police were asked to perform a welfare check. What they found inside the home was something Aurora detectives had rarely seen. Al Kite was dead. He had been restrained. He had been tortured. And he had been murdered with extreme violence. This was not a crime of rage. It was methodical, intentional, planned. Investigators immediately realized something chilling. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no smashed windows, which meant one thing. Al had let his killer inside. The house told a story. Drawers were open, but valuables were still there. Electronics untouched. Money not taken. This was not a robbery. There was no clear motive, but there were signs of preparation. Investigators discovered handwritten notes left behind, notes believed to belong to the killer. They outlined details about the home, its layout, the neighborhood, even escape routes. This wasn't impulsive. It was rehearsed. The man calling himself Bob had not come to rent a room. He had come to plan a murder. As detectives reconstructed the timeline, they realized Bob had visited multiple times before the attack. Each visit wasn't about the room. It was surveillance. He learned Al's routines, his habits, his schedule, and when the moment was right, he acted. Forensic evidence was collected. DNA was recovered. This should have been the breakthrough, but it wasn't. Because Bob didn't exist. The name was fake. The background was fake. The accent possibly fake. No records matched him. No school, no visa, no history. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere. Police released a composite sketch. They appealed to the public. Nothing. Months passed, then years. The case refused to move. Detectives consulted profilers. They all agreed on one thing. This killer was highly intelligent, organized, patient, emotionally detached. Someone capable of planning far beyond a typical crime. Someone who enjoyed control. Investigators also noted something deeply unsettling. The killer left behind DNA, but it was clean. No fingerprints, no traceable fibers, nothing accidental. He had planned even the forensic aftermath. This wasn't luck. It was expertise. As the case stagnated, theories emerged. Was Al targeted personally? Or was he simply convenient? Did Bob choose him randomly? Or had he been watching him long before the ad? No evidence answered those questions. Friends were interviewed. No enemies, no threats, no disputes. Al had lived a quiet life. which made the brutality harder to explain. The killer hadn't just wanted Al dead. He wanted to dominate him. That detail haunted investigators, because domination suggests motive beyond money, and motive beyond necessity. The case earned a nickname, the Hammer Killer. But names didn't bring answers. The man behind the crime vanished, and with him, the truth. By the end of 2004, the case had gone cold, but the file never closed, because the killer made one mistake. He left behind something no amount of planning could erase: DNA. And one day, that DNA would speak, but not yet. Cold cases don't die, they wait. And in the murder of Al Kite, time only deepened the mystery. As years passed, forensic science advanced, DNA databases expanded, new analytical methods emerged. Investigators hoped technology would do what interviews could not. They tested the DNA again. Still no match. Not in criminal databases. Not in international records. The killer had no known history. That fact alone terrified investigators, because it suggested this wasn't his first crime. Just his cleanest. Profilers revisited the case. They focused on the accent. Experts believed it was intentionally inconsistent, sometimes Eastern European, sometimes vague. The conclusion: the accent was likely fake, a tool, a mask. The killer wanted witnesses to remember something unreliable, something that couldn't be pinned down. Even the name Bob was generic, disposable. Everything about the suspect was designed to vanish. As investigators studied the notes left behind, more details emerged. The handwriting was neat, controlled, careful. This was not panic writing. It was deliberate. The killer had studied the home extensively, which raised another disturbing theory. What if Al was never the real target? What if the killer was practicing? Some investigators quietly wondered if this was a test run, a rehearsal. That possibility kept the case alive, because if the killer had done this before, or planned to again, stopping him mattered. The case was featured on national programs. Tips poured in, thousands of them, but none led to an arrest. The DNA remained unmatched. As years turned into decades, frustration grew. The killer had committed what many considered a perfect crime, but perfection has limits, because DNA doesn't forget, and law enforcement never fully stops looking. Today, the murder of Al Kite remains unsolved. The killer's identity unknown, but investigators still believe he is alive, living somewhere, blending in, invisible. A man who once planned every detail, except the one thing that could still destroy him, his DNA. And somewhere, someday, that evidence may finally speak. Until then, Al Kite's story remains a warning that sometimes the most dangerous people don't force their way in. They knock politely, they smile, and they wait. Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story.